Hello, welcome to Moving Day here at Why Wait Till Sunday. We are going to look at some risers and fallers now that the dust has settled on spring practices. Dust has settled on the NFL draft. And I got to be honest, I don't think I put out an episode last week. After the draft, I hit a bit of a wall. We had been pumping out a ton of content over at campus2canton.com, the mothership, if you will, for Why Wait Till Sunday podcast. And, I think there was a big exhale after the draft. And, I didn't have it in me to put out too much last week, but back now. And, we had two birthdays, myself and my wife. We have back-to-back birthdays, actually. So we had some celebrations going on there, and Mother's Day. And, in the middle of May, for my family at least, is actually kind of busy. So I apologize if anyone was looking forward to an episode and didn't get one last week, but we're going to try to be back on a regular schedule from here on out as we move towards the summer. And, the NFL never stops. So on the NFL side, we've got rookie mini camps. Then we're going to have OTAs. We're going to start hearing buzz about certain players and drum beats over the summer. On the college side, it is a little quiet now in terms of depth chart movement until we get to the summer camps, leading up into August. But I bet, it's mid-May, probably 6 weeks or so, I would imagine, until some of those camps start. There's much more regulations in college as to when they can start practice and all that kind of stuff. I would say depth charts right now are fairly frozen. We had the spring, the early enrollees showed their stuff. We got to see some things, and I had some pods. You can go back and look at, risers and fallers from spring games, winners and losers, I think I called it, which, maybe is rude. I should call it risers and fallers. But now, taking a step back, looking at my overall rankings on the college side, and wanted to highlight a couple of big time risers for me and fallers over the course of the entire spring process, now that all the dust has settled. So without further ado, let's get this thing started, and we're going to have a good episode. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, and welcome to Why Wait Till Sunday. I'm your host, Alfred, and I am here with a very special guest tonight.
This guy's got it all, everything you could ask for.
Longhorn fans are excited about Bijan Robinson, number 5. This is a guy that comes in as the number 1 running back recruit in the country.
Elite.
Back to the ground with Robinson, who spins and then tries to bounce it. A stiff arm, another one as he rides it, keeps his balance. They're going to say step down.
He's got tremendous upside.
By Stevenson, wrapping a little bit of pressure as he launches it downfield. Touchdown, Sooners, the breakout freshman, Marvin Mims.
Ole Miss is so confused on defense. Lane Kiffin was trying to get a timeout. Instead, it's a first down, and it's a touchdown for defense.
He's my play of the week. Smash potential here. That's what I'm saying.
The royalty of college football is in assembly at the Rose Bowl 2006.
Right, here we go. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Quarterback risers for me. And this has to do with basically thinking about it. Production on the college side, I think, was always going to be there for a lot of these guys. They were starters. But a lot of this is risers in terms of their NFL potential, which in Campus to Canton obviously matters because you do want to carry those guys over to your NFL side. And the first one here is a guy I really like. I got hammered on our Campus to Canton QB ranking summit for having him so high. And I dropped him, and now he's back up because you know what? If you believe in a guy, you just believe in a guy. And that would be Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech. His freshman season leaves a lot to be desired, but this was a true freshman at 18-year-old coming in off a COVID offseason and jumping into a Power 5 major football conference starting role on a team transitioning out of the triple option into a more modern offense. I mean, it was one of the hardest tasks you could ask an incoming true freshman QB to do. And while he did struggle, he also shined in some areas and really looked like a dynamic difference maker at quarterback. And so, just going over his stats real quick, he completed only 55% of his passes with a fairly weak 7.3 yards per attempt. Neither of those are going to be too impressive. What really stands out, all of this is through a fantasy lens, is 120 rushing attempts for 492 yards. Having that rushing contribution on the ground is a total difference maker. On the college side, you're going to get at least 2 years of fairly, I think from this point on, strong production because of that rushing from Jeff Sims. And here's the kicker for me. He was actually predicted to be a first-round pick on a Pro Football Network 2023 way too early mock draft. And while I'm not putting any weight on that in terms of saying, oh, he is a first-round pick, the fact that anybody out there who is doing content, thinking about the NFL draft, putting out a mock for 2023, and even saying he's like on the radar to be a first-round pick in the NFL is huge for me. And I think, if people are even talking about it, even thinking about it, he's on someone's list somewhere as a first-round quarterback. I think that's important. I think that's worth paying attention to. I kind of thought I was one of the only guys who really liked Jeff Sims, but someone at a fairly major website, Pro Football Network, put him as a potential first-round pick in their 2023 mock. So while it's certainly not a lock, it's certainly not a slam dunk, I'm taking that seriously in terms of I'm seeing something that somebody else is seeing. I really like when you go to the tape, he's got a lot to learn in terms of decision making and accuracy, deep ball accuracy especially, I think. But he has a quick release. And he, I really like that in a quarterback prospect. And then you've got the rushing. So, and I think some composure, you can give him credit for coming in and becoming a team leader, honestly, as a true freshman in a wacky, weird offseason. And so there's a lot to like about Jeff Sims as a projection to more years of development. And I think we could have something on our hands. I mean, guys come out much more out of nowhere than Jeff Sims starting for a Power 5 conference as a true freshman and make their way to the first round of the NFL draft. Look at Zach Wilson. Look at where Desmond Ridder is now being projected to do that, and he's going to be a fifth-year senior at Cincinnati G5 school. So I think it's worth noting, this young production and the rushing ability from Jeff Sims I really like. And he's a riser for me. He's back up. He was up high. And then he dropped. Now he's back up because I'm just going to stick with my convictions here. And I got a little boost from Pro Football Network, so appreciate them for putting out that way, way, way too early mock draft. The next guy is a little bit of a reluctant riser, but I cannot ignore the buzz coming from Malik Willis. Okay, so he was an original signee for Auburn. And I went back and looked, he actually got on the field as a true freshman for Auburn, not as a passer, but he had 16 attempts for 221 yards rushing as a true freshman for Auburn. He didn't really do much as a sophomore. Then he transferred, sat out a year at Liberty, and then blew up as a redshirt junior. So his fourth year at Liberty in 2020. And he completed 64% of his passes for an 8.5 yards per attempt. Those are two key numbers I look at. I want accuracy and I want challenging the ball downfield. Both of those are over at least a minimum threshold that I'm going to be looking for, especially for a little bit of an older prospect. I mean, Jeff Sims, we can be a little bit more lenient, but Malik Willis was, fourth year redshirt junior. So I'm going to want to see these numbers up, and they were past the threshold you want to see. The big number here is 141 rushes for 944 yards and 14 touchdowns. So a true bona fide dual threat. And absolutely demolished. This is 10 games too. So he averaged 94 yards per game, 225 passing, 94 rushing per game. The passing numbers aren't exquisite, but he was pretty accurate, and the yards per attempt is there. I don't mind that at all. 8.5. But the thing is, all of a sudden, these 2022, mocks are coming out, and he is consistently in the first round. And not just Joe's mock draft website.net. We're talking CBS, Pro Football Network, Pro Football Focus. Dane Brugler from The Athletic put him, I think, at number 6 to Philly in his mock draft. Dane Brugler's a legitimate, he is not going for clicks. He is a legitimate reporter for The Athletic, and what he puts out there. He was one of the first guys. Oh no, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah was actually one of the first guys on Trey Lance saying he could be a first round pick. But Brugler's a legit guy. Like these are real websites. These are not click farm websites or something like that. So consistently in the first round, Malik Willis. I would imagine these writers are getting some information from some sources, whether it's, ill-advised or a little bit too aggressive. But, if you're telling me this guy who is a absolute stud on the ground, dual threat quarterback is going to get first round draft capital, we've got to move him up. I mean, C2C, he's already like a 101, the 101 in college only mock drafts that I've been doing. On the college side, he's the best, most dynamic, highest ceiling quarterback, partly because he plays in Liberty's conference. But it's just that dual threat thing, of course. But so on the college side, stud. On the pro side, he falls in the C2C mocks because you are accounting for potential NFL upside. But, all of a sudden, if he's a first round guy, heck, even a second round guy, like Jalen Hurts was, we have to be all in. I mean, he's got to be top 5-6 quarterback in all of C2C. I mean, and that's where I've put him now, because if he's going to get the draft capital, and some team's going to say, "Hey, you're our guy," and he's not just going to be some athletic backup, but he's going to be drafted as a true starter. What do you want? I mean, if he's going to get on the field, you've got that rushing upside to kind of, the rushing floor. And if he's even kind of a good passer, sky's the limit for these guys. Trey Lance was just the third overall pick with one season at North Dakota State. I mean, Willis is going to probably have 2 seasons, at least in FBS. He's going to have bowl games. He's going to have more exposure than Trey Lance ever did, playing even at Liberty. So I believe it. I believe he could be a first round pick. And if that's the case, we are all way too low. At least I was, but I think we've got to all move him up. Both, he was already at the top of the college only rankings, but when we consider NFL future now as a legitimate option, he's got to be way up there. So Malik Willis, big time riser for me. As I've seen these mock drafts come out, I mean, a lot of people are putting it out there. So it's got to be, there has to be some truth to it that people are hearing things about this. QB fallers, I just have one for you. And this is a guy I kind of stuck with him through his freshman season and really stuck with him through seeing what was going to happen at spring. And Harrison Bailey, though, has really failed to separate. I don't know what is going on at Tennessee. They brought in Josh Heupel, who should be an offensive smorgasbord, over there. And all the offensive pieces at Tennessee should be bumped up, I think, in that system, regardless of if it's like a really good, sustainable system. I have questions, but they're going to put up yards and numbers. I mean, that's just going to happen. And so for college production, whoever their quarterback ends up being is going to be a massive producer. I think one or two receivers are going to be producers. I think their backfield is going to be undervalued from here on out relative to what we could see from them. So I really like investing in Tennessee simply because the Josh Heupel system is wild and hyper productive. But the fact is we don't know who the QB is going to be. And we've gone through spring ball, and we still don't know. That's a problem. I thought Bailey, it seemed like his skill set was going to be perfect with a pass happy, spread him wide, and, just throw the ball all over the field. And he's clearly not separating from Hendon Hooker, the transfer from Virginia Tech, who doesn't even throw the ball. I mean, what he did at Virginia Tech last year in 8 games, he had 150 attempts. That's not even 20 attempts per game. He was accurate and he had a nice yards per attempt. He also runs the ball pretty well, but I think it's wild that this guy who didn't even attempt more than 20 attempts per game is going to come in and be this hyper producer in a Josh Heupel offense that throws the ball 40, 50 times a game. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But the facts are Bailey has not separated himself, and that's a big problem for me, for his future. Is he going to transfer? Being beat out by a Hendon Hooker, who I'm not sure is an NFL prospect, that's bad. So maybe I had him too high to begin with, but Bailey is really losing some luster on that prospect rating and that arm that I thought he had. So, okay, so running back risers. Number one is a guy, true freshman, Donovan Edwards, coming to Michigan. And I just wasn't super impressed with his, huddled highlights, basically. He's a bigger guy. I thought he ran fairly upright. He didn't look very twitchy to me. He just kind of looked a little sluggish. He really looked like a wide receiver lining up in the backfield to me. And he was a good receiver. I mean, that's part of the upside there, is that he can line up outside. He does win actual receiving, one-on-ones and things like that. So he is a dual threat out of the backfield. He can legitimately catch passes. But I have to put him up there because the kid was a 5-star. He's going to an empty, basically, depth chart at Michigan. And the spring buzz was just that he was great, that he was explosive, that he was special, that he could be used in all these different ways. And so I think I'm just going to go with what the coaches are saying and not my eyes on his high school tape, which frankly is a little bit difficult to really analyze, some of these highlight tapes because it's just high school competition. It's hard to see what's really going on in some cases. He did not look explosive or twitchy to me, but he's got size. He's got, buzz coming out of camp. He's got a depth chart that's wide open. So if he wins, the majority of the touches for Michigan, catches passes, sky's the limit for Donovan Edwards. And, I'm willing to definitely say I was wrong on my evaluation of his high school tape. And so I had to put him up. I had to rise him up for my rankings. And then Don Chaney Jr., who I mentioned on the spring game risers, he's a little bit of a murkier picture because he got injured. But all the buzz out of camp, out of Miami, was that he was, tracking to actually be the starter and overtake the upperclassman Cameron Harris. But then he got injured. The weird thing is that Miami just does not seem to like Cameron Harris, which I think is very odd. He's been pretty good for them. He was actually really good last year, but they did not give him feature back workload. I'm surprised he's hanging around kind of at Miami anyway, but he is, and he's still there. But if John Chaney is healthy and comes back and is the starter, we're talking about a sophomore who is going to get starting reps in a major conference school. Sometimes I just take a step back and I say, boom, young production, check. Boom, Power 5, check. It's a running back, check. These are all good things. And he's shown some quickness. He's a bigger guy, 210 pounds. I think he could be tracking towards workload, feature workload type of guy. He's got the size, he's got athletic ability. I've seen him look shifty and good. He catches passes, caught more passes than Cameron Harris, even in more limited duty. So I like Don Chaney a lot. He's rising for me. And we'll see what happens with that Miami backfield. But even if he doesn't do it this year, Cameron Harris will be gone next year, and he can be a feature guy in year 3 and kind of do that whole Javonte Williams explosion in year 3, still declare early and, be right on our maps for the next year. Fallers really hurts my heart. 2 guys I've been pounding the table for, and coming out of spring, they're both stock to me is just down, and that's Jason McClellan for Alabama. Really thought there was a window here for him to take the reins and become the stud and be a bit of a value play, for a guy who could come in and be the bell cow for Alabama as a sophomore would just be awesome, and he would incredibly shoot up anybody's rankings. The problem is he didn't do that. In fact, he played with the 2 group in the spring game, whereas fellow classmate, same year, Roydell Williams played with the starting group with Bryce Young at under center. And this was with Trey Sanders not playing. It was with, I think Brian Robinson wasn't playing. So like the 2 upperclassmen running backs were still working injuries. And so the top 2 were the sophomores or rising sophomores. And McClellan kind of took a backseat to Roydell Williams, which I didn't see coming. I think McClellan looks excellent, size, speed, breakaway speed, receiving ability. I mean, I just think he looks awesome. I loved his high school tape. But the coaches are telling us he's not next in line. And I think that's a problem because I kind of think this is the year he needed to do it because Trey Sanders is going to eventually be back unless he, transfers. But Trey Sanders, is going to get healthy. If he produces, you only need 1 year at Alabama. I mean, you produce 1 year at Alabama, go to the NFL, you're going to be just fine. You're going to have great draft capital. All these guys, they know they only need their 1 year to explode. And so Trey Sanders is going to be back sometime. Kamar Wheaton is a bit of a raw but hyper athletic prospect in the backfield, and he is going to, maybe take this first year to learn a little bit and get his feet wet, but he's a threat in 2022. And so Jace McClellan, I think, needed to really put a stamp on it this year. If he doesn't do that, then you're going to be fighting Kamar Wheaton. Roydell Williams is still there, and if he's above him on the depth chart, that's a guy in your own class. That's a problem. So bummer. I mean, I don't know what it is that's holding him back because he looks great to me, but coaches are telling us he's not quite there. DeMarcus Bowman, another one. And maybe I expected too much too quick for him. He transferred to Florida last year after basically 1 or 2 games at Clemson, sat out the rest of the time. And I was just thinking, like, this guy's going to come onto campus in the spring and blow everyone away. He had a couple highlights from practice and things like that. He also sustained a bit of a knee injury, apparently, and wasn't able to get the reps, get on the field. I think he's got to just have the most talent in that backfield. I think he's the most explosive dual threat receiver runner that Florida can put on the field. Maybe he's more raw. Maybe he hasn't had time to digest the playbook, learn a new system with the injury, et cetera, et cetera. But, he didn't do what I thought he would do. And Florida's backfield it's deep, if not elite. We've got, I say we, I went to school there, but we've got, Dameon Pierce, who's presumably kind of the most grinder-ish type back, first and second down. We've got Naquan Wright, who a lot of people like. He was good in spurts last year. He's a good pass catcher. He's kind of a nice all-around running back. Malik Davis, who is another kind of more of a satellite back than Lorenzo Lingard, who came on. Apparently in this spring, a lot of the reports say he really came on and looks like a more well-rounded running back. And then you've got Bowman, who I still think is the best running back on the roster, but he's got to prove it. And so far, he's not really risen up the depth chart the way I thought he would. So he's a bit of a faller for me now. Wide receiver risers. Okay. Agiye Hall for Alabama. Freshman receiver, comes in, spring game, kind of dominates, looks fantastic, has a big highlight reel reception for a touchdown, another long pass caught, and what else do you need to know? I mean, if any freshman receiver comes in and commands the looks at Alabama, regardless of what you think of his tape and what he does on the field, the perception is going to be he's the next Julio Jones. And that's just the way it is. If a freshman receiver comes on to Alabama and commands even 20% of that market share this year, just stamp it. I mean, he's a top 3 Devy C2C wide receiver, period. I mean, that's just, it's going to happen. And so, they brought in 4 of the top 12 receivers in the country in this recruiting class. They've got John Mechie there, who personally I'm a little bit unenthusiastic about John Mechie. And then there hasn't been a lot of buzz from their 2020 recruiting class, who seems to all just be kind of meandering about the depth chart without anyone rising. And then you've got all these 4 studs have come in this class, and the guy who put his mark on the field ASAP is Hall. And he's a big dude. He didn't seem to be as athletic as I wanted him to be. I thought Ja'Cory Brooks was kind of the more athletic of the bigger. And then you've got JoJo Earl and Christian Leary, who are more like just the blazing speed guys. Earl kind of the slot guy. But Hall and Brooks, both big outside X receivers. And if it's going to be Hall, then I'll flip him. In fact, I just did on my rankings. I mean, I flipped Hall. He is now a top 10, and Brooks is not. And that's because Hall got there. He got on campus. He got on the field. He made a splash in the spring game, and they have room on their depth chart. They brought in Williams, I think. Jerome Williams, maybe, from Ohio State. He's a speed guy. And, it's rare to see a guy go Ohio State to Alabama. But they definitely seem to need receiving playmakers, or feel like they're thin at receiver, which really hurts the 2020 class. Because if none of those guys are kind of bubbling up to get on the field, then we've got an issue there. But yeah, I mean, Hall, as of right now, looks like a stud that we can invest in now and just watch that stock grow. Because, again, taking a step back and just putting these guys in the category, you've got an Alabama wide receiver who is making plays as early as possible as a spring early enrollee in his freshman season. And that's kind of all you need to know right now, because we don't know anything else about any of the other freshmen right now. So Hall has to, making that move to me is not irresponsible, because we can only know, look, me, you listening to this, probably not NFL level talent evaluators. I'm okay saying that about myself. So even if I love Ja'Cory Brooks from a recruiting standpoint and from a high school tape standpoint, right now, Hall's doing it on the field. I have to say that trumps me reviewing their huddle videos. So I don't feel crazy putting Hall way up there now and above JoJo Earl and everybody, because he's doing something. He's making his mark right now as early as humanly possible, and that is always a good thing. All right, Joe Ngata for Clemson. Kind of an older guy now, going into his 3rd year. He has not done much at all for the Tigers up to this point. As a freshman, really didn't do too much, but I am a little bit lenient on the freshman production, especially if you're in a wide receiver room like Bama, Ohio State, Clemson, LSU. Because they had, who I guess it was T. Higgins, Justin Ross was popping off as a sophomore, and, Ngata didn't do too much as a freshman. As a sophomore, he was injured in and out of the, basically reserve list for a lot of the season. And so a little bit lenient there as well. But this is the year. It has to happen this year for Ngata. And all the arrows are pointing up for him. The depth chart is open. Justin Ross is still not practicing. I hope he can come back, though. But the facts are he's not on the field yet. And EJ Williams is an interesting prospect. But they've lost their top two receivers, Powell and Rodgers, from last year. And I think the depth chart is wide open. And Nagata looks and seems like an ex-stud receiver, big, bulky, BMI out the wazoo. I think he's, over 210 pounds. And then you've got Swinney saying, if he's healthy, I think he can make 1 million plays for us in this year. That's a direct quote. He did say a ridiculous statement, 1 million plays. Maybe that's hyperbole, but there has been enough steam coming out of the Clemson camp on Nagata to make me think he is going to be the option number one in the passing game, and DJU can absolutely feed him the ball. If we're looking at a third-year breakout, I'm okay with that as long as it's big and then he declares early. I'm on board with Ngata, despite it would be a third-year breakout. But that's okay because of some of the weird circumstances around him. Then you've got Adonai Mitchell from Georgia. And man, this guy kind of came out of nowhere. I even did a full review of 3-star prospects and somehow completely missed him, even though he went to Georgia. And I should have said, like, oh, a 3-star going to a high-level Power 5. I want to keep my eye on this guy. And I just missed him. I missed him. I'm sorry, everybody. But I have not missed him now. So he was the spring game star, basically. I think it was like 7 for over 100 yards. He had a beautiful back shoulder touchdown catch, which he caught from starter JT Daniels. So playing with the starting quarterback means something, especially for an incoming true freshman. And then the coaching staff has really said all the right things. We don't care about he was a 3-star. We believed in the talent. Smart is, putting his hand in the dirt saying we grind the tape, and the tape showed us that he was fantastic. So they even said that they thought he could contribute right away. Now, take that into context. This is UGA coaching staff saying they think this true freshman receiver can come in and contribute right away to a depth chart with, at the time, uninjured George Pickens, rising star Jermaine Burton, productive Carius Jackson, and a slew of other 4-star receivers who we haven't even talked about yet. And they said they thought this guy, 3-star, 2021 true freshman, when they looked at him, they thought he could come in and play right away. That is a big statement. That's a big, big statement. And he's now doing it, so we got to take this seriously. I know that Pickens is now injured. So he was injured for the spring game, but he's going to be injured all year. So there is immediate targets available. Burton's injured, but he'll be back, I think. And he may be their number one receiver. Carius Jackson's okay. I think he's kind of a limited slot-only guy, not a feature, target hog to me. And then, next on the list, you've got, I think there's Arian Smith. He's a very fast, interesting 4-star from 2020. But Adonai Mitchell is already doing it. And you've got JT Daniels quoted as saying he's very twitchy, which personally, that's one of my favorite attributes of a wide receiver or a running back for that matter, twitchy. So he says he's very twitchy. He's got a really good understanding of how to get in and out of breaks. This is a true freshman who just got in on spring practice, and JT Daniels is saying that about him. I think we got something special here. In your C2C drafts, don't hesitate to get in on Adonai Mitchell. There's a chance he wasn't even drafted in some freshman drafts because he was a 3-star. And if someone's not paying attention to what happened during the spring and some of the quotes that are coming out, I think he could definitely be overlooked because he's not being talked about very much. There's a lot of other guys on that Georgia depth chart, but I think right now Mitchell is rising. He's rising for me. He should be rising for you. Wide receiver fallers, Julian Fleming. I just have written down who. He was like the number one receiving recruit. Went to Ohio State, and have we heard anything about this guy? The main things coming out of camp were Marvin Harrison Jr. looking fantastic. Jackson Smith and Njigba, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is seeming like he's going to play a lot of slot. Then you've got Wilson moving to the outside, I believe, and JSN in the slot, Olave on the other outside, and then you got Marvin Harrison making buzz. No one is even talking about Julian Fleming. He is entering his second year. We already had one transfer out, Mookie Cooper. We've got G. Scott, I'll mention later, who's transferring to tight end. That depth chart is kind of thinning out, and we still are not hearing about Julian Fleming. I don't know. That is not good. That is not good. Like I said, on a loaded depth chart, I have no problem giving year one a pass, but I want to see something, some buzz, some rising as a second year player, at least something showing me he's coming on. Like even Jackson Smith and Jigba becoming like the primary slot guy in year two, even if he doesn't quote unquote dominate. Like you need to be staking your claim, and Fleming's not doing anything. So big time faller for me. And some of the book on him coming out was he was an athlete, not a receiver. Maybe he's not developing that technical skills. I think that's a big problem. And then Brew McCoy, man, he's going into like his third year. He still hasn't done anything. I'm pretty sure he was running with the second QB group in the spring game. I just kind of don't think he's good. And that's a bummer because he's a really interesting, fun athlete, big guy, but he might not be good at wide receiver. All right. TE risers, tight ends. You didn't think I was going to leave out the tight ends, did you? So Joshua Simon, and this is a guy I've been in on purely finding him from a metrics-based perspective. He really pops. And I haven't heard tons of people talking about him, maybe because he's a group of 5 conference, but he has NFL size. He's listed on the Western Kentucky website as 6'5", 240 pounds. He's got receiver skills. He was listed as that on 247 Sports as a recruit. And they've converted him to tight end, but he played immediately, making the conversion from receiver to tight end. Still played immediately as a true freshman. He accounted for 16% of Western Kentucky's receiving market share in year one. Just to give you an idea of how good that is, it ranks as a top 20 freshman season by a tight end since 2006, which is as far back as our database at Campus to Canton goes. It puts him right next to Austin Safarian-Jenkins, who didn't really do much in the NFL, but he was a high draft pick, and I think there was some other stuff going on with him. And a one, you may have heard of him, Rob Gronkowski, who had 17% of Arizona's market share his freshman season. So 16% for a true freshman tight end is huge. It's very good, and he did that. Then in his second season, Simon, last year for Western Kentucky, had 22% of Western Kentucky's market share, which puts him next to guys like Jermaine Gresham, Martellus Bennett, and Pat Freiermuth in terms of second-year dominator rating for a tight end. So he has now gotten better, and he is in some very good, very NFL-relevant company in terms of being a tight end who's dominating his receiving room, basically. The caveat is all these other guys I've listed are Power 5 tight ends. Joshua Simon is doing this in the group of 5 at Western Kentucky. So it's not quite a one-to-one comparison. It's not quite apples to apples, but it just gives you an idea. He's very good, and he's showing us he's very good. He's got NFL size. A lot of times these athletic guys in the lower conference like Gerald Everett, a little bit undersized, maybe 6'2", 6'3", but if he's really 6'5", 240, he's NFL size. We'll see when whenever he does weigh in and get measured officially. But even if he's 6'4", I think that's pretty good. If he's 6'3", that kind of gets a little bit shorter for a tight end in the NFL. So he's had a great start to his career. Why am I extra excited? But he's going to get Bailey Zappi coming from Houston Baptist. They're going to install a wide open offense, probably 40 to 50 attempts per game. I think on the college side, the production here is just going to be out of this world. I think Zappi is like a top 10 to 15 college only QB next year. Like I think he's going to throw for 350 yards a game. Maybe like 40 touchdowns. I think they're just going to go absolutely ham on the offensive side of the ball. And I think Simon's going to benefit from that. I mean, they've had some lackluster passing so far in the last couple of years, and I think they're going to really open it up. And Simon he's still going to be probably one of the biggest receivers they have, receiver tight end hybrid. And I think he's just going to feast this year. And Bailey Zappi can deliver the ball. He's an interesting guy to watch, honestly. He's going to get into the FBS. He's coming from FCS, Houston Baptist. but he's going to get into the FBS, maybe make a bowl game. The dream for him is you go to the Senior Bowl, impress there, and I think he can be on the NFL radar by the time it's all said and done. But Simon is the guy we're talking about. I think he can be a day 2 selection in 2022. If he, kind of dominates again and chooses to come out early and is really as big as he's listed at, I think he's very athletic and could kind of be a surprise early enrollee in the NFL draft and be earlier selection than you might think at tight end. So he's been a big riser for me. And then I mentioned it before, Gee Scott Jr. A really good receiver, 4-star guy going to Ohio State. And my colleagues here at Campus to Canton have said he's a very, very good route runner. And he was a big dude, 6'3" or 4, I think, 210 pounds as a freshman, and a very good route runner. So you had a big guy who was a good route runner and coming in, but he did not do much as a freshman. And now he's making the move to tight end. The question to me is, how much weight can he pack on? 30 pounds, 40 pounds, I don't know. And still retain his twitchiness and his sharp route running and all that. So it's very interesting, though. You love wide receiver converts to tight end, especially in the modern era where we're using tight ends a little bit more. So he's super intriguing. I mean, he's kind of, obviously he's a riser in the sense he wasn't even ranked as a tight end, and now I do have him there. I think he's like top 20-ish. I mean, he's going to be a project. He's probably not going to play a ton in 2021. So that means in 2022, we're going to be looking for kind of a breakout for him at whatever his new size and body composition is. But you got to love a guy with that level of athleticism converting to tight end. Could really make some waves and, kind of for some people, maybe he'd come out of nowhere in 2022, but I don't think he'll come out of nowhere because we're looking at him now. And that's why you tune in to Why Wait Till Sunday, I hope. Tight end fallers. Eric Gilbert, really nothing to do with his talent. It's just a matter of I don't think you can confidently say he's like the 101 tight end historic prospect when you look at all the things. Athletically and honestly, production at LSU last year was fantastic. He was, his recruiting ranking was like the greatest tight end of all time. But some weird stuff going on. He's back at LSU now, I think. There was some things with grades or I don't know what. He transferred. He was going to go to Florida. Then he was not going to go to Florida. And then he was back at LSU. Now he's back enrolled at LSU. Just odd. But that can all get cleared up. I mean, I didn't drop him a ton. I did drop him from one, kind of tier of his own 1A, B, C, all Eric Gilbert to number 3 behind Michael Mayer. I love at Notre Dame and Jalen Weidermeyer, which you just cannot argue his production at Texas A&M. But Gilbert should probably, he could still be number 1 by the time it's all said and done. I'm just a little bearish now. I mean, you see these guys that just have this herky-jerky path in college. It doesn't always project well to the NFL. But sometimes they do fine. I mean, Cam Newton had a weird story, went to JUCO, went to, Auburn, had 1 year, went to the NFL, and look what he did. I mean, he was great. So sometimes it doesn't mean anything, but sometimes it does mean stuff. And so I'm just ticking him down a little bit. It has nothing to do with his ability. It's all about just, is there something under the hood there that's a little bit wonky that's going to prevent him from truly reaching his, on-field ceiling? Charlie Kohler. I had him pretty high because he's like 6'6", he's got NFL size. He seems to be NFL speed, but I thought he was just kind of unathletic. Watching his tape, not a lot of dynamic movement after the catch, kind of just a big dude who can go up and catch a ball on his own. He can post a guy up, but other than that, it kind of just doesn't do much for me with the ball in his hands. So I think he's just got a low ceiling. I don't think he's like a dynamic, seam ripping tight end. I think he's a big guy who can catch. I didn't see a lot of physicality. So I don't know, is he only a receiving threat? Is he going to be So like if he's not super athletic and only kind of a positional or situational receiving threat, I don't think he's going to command, next level volume or something and be a fantasy relevant tight end for us. So we'll see. He's going back to school. Things can change, and if he gets NFL draft capital and someone's penciling him in as a starter on a real life team, then that's great. I didn't see it. I mean, I just didn't see a lot of excitement from Kohler, so he fell for me. I mean, I thought he was kind of exciting at first, but once I dug into the tape, to me, he just kind of feasted on bad defense and finding his hole in the zone. I didn't think he showed a lot of excitement. So anyway, that's it. That's my risers and fallers. Kind of looking at the whole landscape, guys I really liked and didn't like in this situation. Other than that, depth charts are going to be kind of locked. We're not going to see tons of movement, I would imagine, other than transfers, things like that, till spring comes out. So wanted to get this out to you. And thanks for tuning in. We will continue with Why Wait Till Sunday throughout the offseason. And I really can't wait to get into the DFS again next year. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. So stay tuned, and we will see you next time.